I've chosen to interpret is the introduction for The Great Gatsby. And after reading the book once and then going back and rereading this introduction, I've noticed so many more things that make it so great. I've noticed a lot of foreshadowing and symbolism, and it really explains the way Nick feels. So it almost could be an introduction and a conclusion, because it really just almost sums up the book without giving any of the story away, if that makes sense. But in my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. I think that this quote from his father is a really important part of the book and in understanding Nick. And he knows that he's been very privileged and that not everyone has that, and that's why he chooses to reserve his judgments, because he doesn't know people's backstory and he doesn't know their lives. And I think that's a really important part to understanding Nick's character and why he's so level-headed throughout the book. He didn't say any more, but we've always been unusually communicative in a reserved way. And I understood that he meant a great deal more than that. In consequence, I'm inclined to reserve all judgments, a habit that has opened up many curious natures to me and also made me the victim of not a few veteran bores. The abnormal mind is quick to detect and attach itself to this quality when it appears in a normal person. And so it came about that in college I was unjustly accused of being a politician because I was privy to the secret griefs of wild, unknown men. Most of the confidences were unsought. Frequently I have feigned sleep, preoccupation, or a hostile levity when I realized by some unmistakable sign that an intimate revelation was quivering on the horizon. For the intimate revelations of young men, or at least the terms in which they express them, are usually plagiaristic and marred by obvious suppressions. Reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope. I think that this is another really important line. Nick is saying that in order to reserve your judgments for people, it's not easy. You have to have an infinite amount of hope, and you have to look for the best in people. And he's basically saying that you have to give people the benefit of the doubt and understand that there's more to the story than you know, and that's why you have to reserve your judgments until you understand the full story. I am still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that, as my father snobbishly suggested, and I snobbishly repeat, a sense of fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth. And after boasting this way of my tolerance, I came to the admission that it has a limit. Conduct may be founded on the hard rock or the wet marshes, but after a certain point, I don't care what it's founded on. When I came back from the East last autumn, I felt that I wanted the world to be in uniform and at a sort of moral attention forever. I wanted no more righteous excursions with privileged glimpses into the human heart. Only Gatsby, the man who gives his name to this book, was exempt from my reaction. Gatsby, who represented everything for which I have an unaffected scorn. If personality is an unbroken series of successful gestures, then there was something gorgeous about him, some heightened sensitivity to the promises of life, as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes 10,000 miles away. The responsiveness had nothing to do with that flabby impressionability which is dignified under the name of the creative temperament. It was an extraordinary gift for hope, a romantic readiness, such as I have never found in any other person, and which it is not likely I shall ever find again. And I think that these couple of lines describe Gatsby perfectly, and I think in particular of romantic readiness. It shows that Gatsby had just, like it said, an extraordinary gift for hope, and he was ready to do what he needed to do for Daisy. He had this romantic readiness to where he would essentially lay down his life for her and take the figurative bullet of taking the blame when Daisy hit Myrtle with her car and killed her. He died for her, in a sense, and I think that describes Gatsby perfectly, as a romantic readiness. No, Gatsby turned out all right in the end. It was what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men. And I think that this again describes perfectly how it wasn't Gatsby's personality that caused him the issues and ultimately ended him. It was the people who preyed on his personality, even Daisy, who preyed on his romantic readiness to do anything for her. That's what ended him, and that's what caused him to have the tragic fate that he had. It wasn't his personality, but it was the people of his society, and Daisy even, that preyed on those good features, those inherently good features of him. My family have been prominent, well-to-do people in this Middle Western city for 3 generations. The Carways are something of a clan, and we have a tradition that we're descended from the Dukes of Buccleuch. But the actual founder of my line was my grandfather's brother, who came here in 51, sent a substitute for the Civil War, and started the wholesale hardware business that my father carries on today. I've never saw this great uncle, but I'm supposed to look like him, with special reference to the rather hard-boiled painting that hangs in my father's office. I graduated from New Haven in 1915, just a quarter of a century after my father, and a little later I participated in the delayed Teutonic migration known as the Great War. I enjoyed the counter-raid so thoroughly that I came back restless. Instead of being the warm center of the world, the Middle West now seemed like the ragged edge of the universe. So I decided to go east and learn the bond business. I think that part really explains why Nick came to the east. He came back from the war, he said, restless, and he wanted that sense of adventure that the 20s and the 20s culture brought him, and that's why he went from the Middle East as the ragged edge of the universe, and he went from that kind of more traditional area where his family was to the more exciting, adventurous, and new East, which had the roaring 20s feel to it. Everybody I knew was in the bond business, so I decided to go east to learn the bond business. So I supposed it could support one more single man. All my aunts and uncles talked it over as if they were choosing a prep school for me, and finally said, yes, with very grave, hesitant faces. Father agreed to finance me for a year, and after various delays, I came east, permanently, I thought, in the spring of 22.